So just to get started, we're going to be using an online IDE. IDE, by the way, stands for Integrated Development Environment, but just think of it as a text editor. It's just a text editor. That's all it is. So go ahead and open up this link. This is going to be your workspace during this session. And this has everything you need to run code. It has a Python interpreter already running. An interpreter is just a program that takes the code that you write in whatever language you're writing in and translates it line by line into machine language, which you can think of as ones and zeros. Because actually, when you're programming, the language that you're writing in, the computer does not understand. It has to be translated into a language that the processor can understand. So, so that's the job of the interpreter. And if you open up the link that I sent, let me share my screen. Let me put this into a separate window. Sorry, everyone, for just a moment, please. All right, so can you all see my window over here? And if you double click on my window, it will expand and I will get smaller if you double click on it and hop in. So cool. So this is the IDE that we're going to be using for this session. And we're going to be writing in a language called Python. It's, I think, very readable, and I think it's very easy to learn. So let's get started. Let's write our first program. So I'm just going to write something very simple. Oh, it's probably too small for you guys to see. Let me make it bigger. There we go. Okay. We're going to write the classic first program that every programmer writes for their first program. So does everybody have an instance of this open? Yep, hello world, exactly. Does everybody have an instance of this open in their browser and ready to follow along? We're going to learn basic concepts of programming, and then we're going to make a small calculator app as part of this session. Okay, awesome. What we're going to do first is just write print, and then in quotation marks, we're going to write hello world. All right, and that's all you need to do. And then go ahead and click run, and your computer talks to you. You did it. Awesome. So let me break down a little bit what's going on here, what we just did. We did something called calling a function. And now that I'm hovering over it, you get tons of information. That this is the IDE helping you. The text, like the IDE has some extra features that a text editor doesn't. And one of the things is it can give you some information about the code you're writing. But all we did was we called a function. So we called the function print, which is something that's native to Python, and we passed in a parameter. So print takes in a parameter here that we passed in hello world. And something that we don't really need to care about what print is actually doing behind the scenes. We can just know that if we type print and we put in the parameter hello world, we're going to get out hello world. This is something that's kind of important to computer science. It's called a black box, where you know what inputs go in and you know what inputs are going to come out, or what outputs are going to be produced based on that input, but you don't need to see inside the box. You don't actually need to know what print is doing inside of it. So print is a function that we called, and we passed in a value called hello world. There are a few different kinds of values or a few different types of data that we can use. And let me go through a couple of them right now. So what we just did when we did print hello, this is hello here in this situation, and I'm going to type this pound symbol here, or the hashtag. This is a comment. So whatever I write after the hashtag, the interpreter, when we click run, is not going to care about it. So I can write whatever I want in here, and then I can click run, and the program still behaves as we expect. This is commenting your code. I think commenting is really important to do because it lets you know afterwards when you're looking at it again, you can, you don't remember what you were thinking when you were writing this code before, but writing a comment helps you to remember, how something works. So I'm writing a comment here, and I just want to explain what this is. So in this situation, hello is a type of data called a string. So hello is a string. And a string really means text. Anything, so in quotation marks, when you put things in quotation marks, that tells Python that you're writing a string, which really means you're writing text. So here we're writing a string. But there's other kinds of data too. So let's try another one. You can add in a number. So this here, in this situation, when we run the code again, so we print hello and we print 1, which is what we expect. 1 here is called an int, or for short for integer. There is a distinction between integers and decimal numbers in programming, and it's important to keep that in mind oftentimes for math. Python, it doesn't matter so much, but actually in some languages, if you did, like 3 divided by 2, you would get 1, whereas you would expect to get a decimal number. So it is important to know that in this situation, 1 is an int. So let's try another one. We can print, 1.0, or let's do 1.5 right here. So in this situation, 1.5 is a double. Alejandro, to answer your question, the Python workshop assumes that you have programming knowledge. So this is for just teaching programming concepts to people who've never programmed before. If you already know Python, then that will teach you, if you already know programming, that will teach you how to write in Python if you already know C, for instance, and it's going to cover a lot more ground. So in this situation, 1.5 is a double, or a decimal number. So this is what we call decimals when we're programming. And of course, you could do math, right? So let's try and do some math here. So if you're following along, we can do addition, like 4 plus 5. Oops. We can do 4 plus 5. And if we run it, we're able to calculate 9. We can do other operations too. We can do 4 minus 5, and we get -1 as we expect. We can multiply. You use the asterisk to multiply, and we can run that. And you get 20 as we expect. And then we can do 4 divided by 5, and we get 0.8 as we expect. Yes, so you can do math operations. These are some different examples of math operations that you can do. So the symbols that we use to do math for, addition, we just used plus, and subtraction, we just use minus, and multiplication, we just use star, and then division, we use the slash. Are there any questions up to this point? Is everybody at least with me here? Brandon, I think so, but that's a question for the Python workshop, I think. I'm not an expert, so I don't want to answer wrong. Yes, okay, we're good. All right. Great. So let's talk about, if we want to print like hello many times or something like that. So we can obviously do, oops. We can obviously copy and paste. That's not good to do, but I'm just giving you an example. So, we want to print hello 5 times, for instance. So, and let me comment this out. Oops. Yeah, so obviously we can copy and paste and we'll get hello 5 times as we expect, but that's really not a good way of doing things. So instead, what we can do is we can use something, we can loop. We can tell Python that we want to do something a set number of times. So, and this is going to introduce a concept called variable. A variable, just like in math, you can have x equals 10, right? And I can go in here and print x. And as we'd expect, it's going to print what I put into this variable here. So I can do y equals 20, and I can do x plus y, and I'll get the expected result. So all I'm doing here is I'm assigning this value 10 to x. I'm assigning this value 20 to y. I'm sorry, I was supposed to talk about loops, but I just want to talk about this for a moment. And then when I add them up, their values are actually what gets added. So we can consider these like containers for values. They're like things that you store values in, and then you can use them. But what happens if we do something, you have to be careful that like your operations match up with what you expect. So, because if we do 10 here and then we do hello, I think that this will get an error because these data types don't match. Obviously, you can't add numbers and words. Those don't add together. That doesn't work. So here, like this is an issue. So we need to make sure, and we got our first error here. Type error unsupported operand types. That means that the operands are this and this. Those are operands. This is the operator for plus, int and string, because we're adding up an int and we're trying to add an int to a string, and Python is like, whoa, 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 I don't know how to do that. Like that makes no sense. So, so it's important that you match up values like as you would expect. I think though, if we do y plus x, what's actually going to happen is that, well, it might be only, okay, never mind. Sorry, I was trying to see if something in C would work I'm sorry, C++ would work in Python, but no. Awesome. So we've encountered our first error. We've learned how to read errors, and Python is going to tell you exactly where the problem is. So if we read here, we're in file main.py, which matches up with what we expect, line 11. So if we go here, line 11, that's where we have the offending part, the part where we've added something that doesn't work. Awesome, great. So we've had our first error. Now, if we do this, I will say this because we can add strings to strings. So if we run now, we can add the strings together because it's doing something called concatenation. It's adding a string to a string. All it's doing is we said X is world and Y is hello. And so we add them together and we get hello world. It's just connecting them. So you can do that. And that's not addition. It's called concatenation. which is different slightly. Awesome, cool. So I'm gonna get back to the example that we had before where we want to repeat something over and over again, but we don't want to copy and paste because that's bad. Don't copy and paste your code usually in order to do things multiple times. So how can we do that? We can use a for loop. So we're just gonna say for I in range 5. So we want to do something 5 times, right? And then we can go here and we can say, we can take this and delete it from here and say, and we have to make sure that we tab here, we have space, print y plus x. And then let's see what happens. Hooray, we did it. Awesome. So what's actually happening here? So this is called a for loop. We're doing something for a number of times. So we've made a new variable here called I, and we're telling it, if we actually, let's print I just so you can see what's happening. So now instead of printing hello world, I told you we made a new variable. Let's see what the value of that variable is. And you can see we're incrementing each time, right? So we started at 0 and we go to 4. But we said 5, right? Isn't that kind of weird? Well, in most programming languages, actually, you start counting at 0. So when we say in range 5, what's actually happening is it's making us a list of numbers. This is this range 5. What this actually means is the same thing as like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and it's gonna yell at me because this doesn't make any sense. But I'm just trying to illustrate that when we say range 5, the computer is actually generating this for us. It's generating a list of numbers. And then I is being set to each one of those numbers, one after the other. So if we want to print 0 through 5, because we started at 0, we told it we wanted 5 numbers, it's actually going to count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we want to count 5, we have to actually make this 6. And this is in most programming languages. There are a couple that I think MATLAB starts at 1. But for all intents and purposes, counting starts at 0 in programming. Cool. And we can actually, let me do something kind of cool here. Let me set another, let's make a word list. So I'm going to make, let's see some names that I see. I see Radha is on. I see James is on. I see Sean is on. And I see Brandon is on. And hopefully this works. So if I do this, it's working. Yay, it worked. So it's doing the same thing we just said, except this time it's doing it with strings. It's each time the for loop runs, it's just setting I to each value in the list that it's being given. Is there a way to make 1 through 5 instead of 0 through 4? So skip 0 and start at 1. Yes, there is. I'll teach you 2 ways to do it. So let me undo all that I've done here. One thing you can do is, we have this at range 5, right? Just go in here and type I plus 1, because we can do addition, right? That's a thing computers can do. So just run that, and now we have 1 through 5, and we skip 0. That's one way to do it. I think this is a good way to do it, actually. You can set this to do 1 through 6, I think, and then run this, and then we get 1 through 5 again. So you have 2 options. You can do addition, and we do that a lot when we're off by 1. because we start at 0, sometimes we're off by 1. So we do sometimes put plus, just add 1 to it because that makes it work. Or in here in this range, you can do 1 through 6. You can tell it you want 1 through 6. Awesome, awesome. So we've made a loop. We know how to make a loop now. We know how to do things over and over. Now I'd like to teach something else. So let's say we want to do that like a bunch of times. Like let's say we have, we want to print like for some reason we have to write it this way. And we want to do a bunch of stuff in succession. So we want to like do hello, and then we want to have, you know, we want to add stuff, and we want this to happen. You know, we want this to happen like as a process, and we want the process to be the same each time. This is just an example. I'll give a better example in a little bit. Let's try this. Let's have it run. Uh-oh. Hello, hello. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so for some reason we want to do that, right? We want to print out this very specific thing, and we want to do it over and over again. One thing we can do is we can take this functionality that we've written, and we can turn it into something called a function. So I'll give a better example, actually. Let's say we want to take 2 numbers, and like we want to take 3 numbers. We know that we want to add 3 numbers. Like that's the thing we want to do. We can make a function that's only job is to take 3 numbers and add them. So I told you that print was a function, right? Well, we can make our own functions. We don't just have to use the ones that exist. So let's do this. Let's make a function called, and so we have to, when we're making a function, we write def, and then def is short for def do this thing. No, def is short for define. Add 3 numbers. And then let's pass in 3 variables. So num1, num2, num3. Awesome. So inside of this, like this is our function signature, or it says like what the function looks like, or it's our call. Like we're defining how to call the function. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna return. Return means like give it back. You'll see, or better yet, let me do it with a print, and I'll explain return later. So let's make a new variable called sum, and let's just do num1 plus num2 plus num3. Okay, and then we'll go in here and we'll do print sum. So every time we use this function, we're going to pass in 3 numbers, we're going to add them together as a sum, and then we're going to print that sum. So how can we do this? Well, can I zoom the text in? Absolutely. Yeah, please, if something's not clear, feel free to ask questions. Is that better? Okay, awesome. So we have our function to add 3 numbers. Let's go ahead and use it. So I'm going to say add 3 numbers. I'm going to say 1, 1, 1. And let's see what happens. Awesome. So it was our expected behavior. We passed in 3 numbers, and we got the result that we expected. We added them together. We're essentially making a recipe, so that every time we want to add 3 numbers, every time we want to do this thing, instead of needing to write out the code to actually do that, we could just do this. So here's an example. Let's make a for loop, right? So I in range 5. And then we'll do add 3 number. And let's do I. So this is going to add I to itself 3 times. So let's see what happens. So of course we get what we expect. We get 0, and then 1 plus 1 is 3, and 2 plus 2 is 6. You know, we get the output that we expect. But we were able to make this into a recipe so that we can use it anywhere we want. Does anybody have any questions up into this point? Does everybody feel comfortable? Is everybody following along on their own? All right, I'll take that as a yes. So, awesome. So let's, in this case, what variable type is the num? Good question. In this case, the variable type is an int because it is an integer number. So, but actually, so you've raised a good point. In Python, and so I think, Brandon, maybe you programmed in some other languages, you have to say what the value is. Like you have to do int, you know. But in Python, you don't have to do that. Python is really helpful and is going to decide that for you. So let's say that we wanted to add, you know, I'll get rid of this. If we want to add together 3 numbers, and we want to do 1.5 plus 2 plus 1.5, you know, like we're using decimal numbers too. As long as they mix together, as long as Python can do what's inside this function and actually add them together, it's fine. Now, if we try to do something, we already said x is world. Let's put x in here. Well, we're gonna get an error because it's gonna say, I don't know how to add together a float and a string. So if the person who asked me if Python has floats, it does. Yeah, so we have to make sure that the parameters that we put in, the behavior inside the function is actually going to work. And if you read documentation, it'll tell you like usually what type a data type should go in. But here, because we wrote it ourselves, we have to make sure that we account for that. So awesome. Well, cool. So let's deal with some user input. So let's have the computer ask us our name. So I can leave this here, actually, this function, because it's not going to do anything unless we call it. Let's make another print statement and say, hi there, what is your name? And we're going to do something. We're going to say, let's make a new function name equals input. Oh, actually, we can copy and paste this in here. I'm sorry. I'm used to programming in C, and you can't do that. So if we do this, this should work. Okay, hi there, what is your name? Well, my name is Chris. Oh, I misspelled my name, and nothing happened. Hey, what happened? Okay, well, we have to actually do something with name. So let's do print. We can say, hi there. And we'll leave a space, and we'll do this string addition that I talked about before, concatenation. And so we're adding a string to a string, so it's okay. So let's try again. I'll add a space here. So we do, hi there, what is your name? And I'm gonna put Chris, and it's gonna say, hi there, Chris. The computer introduced itself to be awesome. Great. So we can deal with user input in this way. And we can, you know, this is really good. Like, of course, when we're in the terminal, we want to get user input. Let's show a more realistic example. Let's say we want to make a calculator application in our terminal. So we know how to get user input. We know how to print things. We know how to loop. How did I get my name on there? Okay. So, okay, good question. Let me take a moment to explain. So I'm going to run this again. This is called the terminal. So actually, this is this black box here. This is where our code lives. This is just a text document. There's nothing special about it. It's just a text document. It's instead of .txt, it ends in .py, just to let the computer know it's Python. This is the terminal. This is how we interact with our programs. So like if you don't build a user interface, like we haven't built a user interface or anything like that, here we can interact with our program this way. So we told it, when we did this function here, we told it that we are expecting the user to give us input. So what Python's going to do is it's going to stop here. It's going to stop execution of the code. It's going to stop on this line, and it's going to wait for us to put in input because we told it that we're expecting it. So if I put my name here, I'm just typing in the terminal, just typing in the black box, and I click enter to let it know that I'm done giving input, then it will continue execution. Awesome. Great question, Sean. Are there any other questions? I'll pause here for a moment. Okay, cool. Awesome. So we know how to get input. We know how to print. We know how to loop. So let's make something out of this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of this. Let me comment it out just so people can reference it. So it's still there. Remember, this is the comment sign. This means that nothing after the comment sign gets executed. It's not code anymore. It's to let the programmers, it's to help programmers understand code. Okay, cool. So let's make a calculator program. So what I'm going to do is let's define some functions. Let's define something called what we'd like to do is we'd like to do something where we say, you know, would you like addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? This is something we want to ask the user, right? And then we're going to want the user to say subtraction, you know, and then we say, okay, what is number 1, right? And then we put in 4 or whatever our number is. And then we say, okay, what is number 2? And we say like 4 again. And then we can say the result is 0, right? Okay. This is our vision for our program. This is what we want it to do. So let's figure out how to actually get it to do what we want it to do. And so, okay, awesome. So let me add some comments just so we know what we're doing. So this is our vision. Great. Awesome. So let's get started. So the first thing is we're gonna, of course, print, or we're gonna do input. So let's make a variable called operation. And let's say, let's just copy and paste. So I'm gonna copy this. And I'm gonna write input. Remember, this is the function that we're telling Python that we expect the user to give us some input. And now I've got my quotes. This is important to define whatever goes inside the quotes as a string. And so now I add in the text. So, and I'm just to make things easier, I'm just gonna add in these in parentheses. We're gonna actually ask the user to give us a letter, you know, instead of having to type in, you know, all of that text, because that's gonna get kind of annoying. Awesome, so we got the first part of our calculator. Let's try it out. Awesome, and it's kind of tight because it's writing it all in one line. But if I put D here, you know, nothing, and let me add in some new, so this right here, this is like just a special character. Because we can't actually type enter in here, it doesn't work because we're making it a new line, and Python will say, well, you had a string, but you never told me where the end of the string was, so I don't like this. So we don't like that. So let's go back. This \n just means make a new line. It's the new line character. So we have, let's make a new line character after all of these. Okay. Let's try again. This looks much better, doesn't it? We can get rid of these commas too. All right, so all we did was we told it, let me run it again. We told it that we're gonna make some new, like these are just to make new lines. So if I put in D now, nothing happens because we haven't told it what to do. So we got this operation thing. Hey, Chris, question, how would you print a quotation mark? Great question. All you have to do is do \quotation. So \, let me explain. These are called escape characters. The reason they're called escape characters is because you're escaping out of like this trap. You can kind of think of this like these are like boundaries, and you have problems like you can't type enter, you can't type the quotation mark because it thinks it's the end of the string. So these are called escape characters. We're escaping out of the requirements of being inside of being a string, is one way to think about it. There's a bunch of escape characters. You can Google them and you can find them. But the two that I use most often, of course, are new line and quotation mark. Great question, James. All right. So now we want to have some behavior that's different depending on what the user gives us. And we're able to do this. We're going to use something called an if statement. So, and really just think of it as if this, then that. Like if this thing is true, then do this thing. So let's see an example. If operation is equal to A, then I'm just gonna print. We're gonna do addition because we need to still get the user's input. Yes, Alyssa, a switch statement would be easier, but I want to go over if statements just because I think people have not seen them before. If you're familiar with a switch statement, though, it's definitely easier. And then else, right? Let's just print. Okay, I just want to illustrate how if statements work first. So we have an if and we have an else. So if this is true, then we're going to do what's inside this if statement. Otherwise, else, we're going to do something different. So let's run this just to make sure that this is what we expect. So if we do A here, we're going to do addition then. And if we try this again and we put, D, we're not going to do addition. Perfect. That's what we want. I just want to introduce this real quick. So let's just write addition, just because we're going to have to do some other stuff. And then we can have another if statement. Operation equals equals. You might be wondering, why is it equals equals? Well, it's because equals, a single equal sign, is to assign a value. So when we do, these two statements are different. X equals 1 and X equals 1. X equals 1 means take 1 and put it inside of X. Make X 1. X equals 1 is a question. It is, does X equal 1? So these are two different things. This is a test. This is an assignment. But in if statements, we want to do tests. We're asking questions. We don't want to assign values. We want to know what they are. So we're going to do subtraction. And I'm just gonna put in here subtraction, you know, if multiplication. We can actually do else if, actually, which we should do, I think. Ah, I see. Because we didn't put anything inside. Okay, that's okay. Yeah, well, I'll have to, let's come back to this part after we actually get the numbers in. So I'm sorry, I didn't plan that one really properly because it's not gonna quite work how I want. I mean, it's gonna give like red squiggly lines and I know people don't like that. Okay, so would you like addition or subtraction? And then we ask for a number 1, and then we ask for a number 2. And because we're asking what is number 1, what is number 2, let's make a function that does that. So let's make a function here, and here we go. And we're gonna print, actually, let's do input. Okay, what is number? And then we're gonna add on the end, what is number n? Because what we're gonna do, you'll see in a moment, we're gonna ask for those 2 numbers. We're gonna prompt for each of those by changing this parameter, instead of having to copy and paste what is number 1 and what is number 2. And then we're gonna make this a value. We're gonna assign this to a variable, and then we're gonna do something I told you about return val, right? Return means when we use this function, give back this whatever value, whatever val is, we're going to give it to the variable that we assign. So like, it'll be more clear. Num1, here we have num1 is a variable. We're going to actually assign it. We're going to assign prompt 1 to it. And then we're going to do the same thing. Num2 is equal to prompt 2. So what's going to happen? We're going to run this operation. We're going to ask for the operation. Then we're going to run prompt as a function. So we're gonna ask for as input what is number, which number? N. And we're giving it n as a parameter. And we can do this twice. So let's see if it works as we expect. So we're gonna do addition. Oh, only concatenate. String to string. Okay. So this is something in Python I have to remember how to do this. Because this is different from the Python or the languages I usually use. Whoops. Yeah, don't feel bad about Googling things, by the way. Oh, okay. I have to tell it that I want it to be a string. I remember now. Right. I'm just going to use this right here. And I'm casting it to a string. So because a number can be treated as both an int and a string, I'm just telling it here, Python, this is a string now. And if I run this again, hopefully this works. Okay, what is number 1? That's what we expect. So I'll put in 1. What is number 2? 1. And then that's what we expect. Okay, cool. So let me just add in a space afterwards. So the reason Python freaked out is because, you know, you saw me make a mistake. It's okay to make mistakes. Like, errors happen all the time. The important thing is figuring out how to fix them. And Google honestly is your friend. If you Google like I Googled concatenate into string Python because I forgot how to do it in Python. You know, in other languages, you could just put them together. So what I did was I had to explicitly tell it, okay, I have a string here. this was being treated as a number, so it didn't work with a string to be added together, because Python says, you have letters and numbers, those don't mix, because you can't actually do addition with them. You have to do concatenation. So I told Python, this number, treat it like a string, make it into a string. So that's what happened. So now, yeah, let's run this again, just make sure. And then we have it nice, and it's nice and formatted. Okay, great. So awesome. So now let's start writing out our functions here, or our if statements. So we said if the operation is A, right? And there's a space, so it's freaking out at me. We want to print num1 plus num2. If the operation is an S, we want to print num1 minus num2. And then if operation equals M, we want to do print num1 times, remember it's the asterisk, num2. Okay? And if the operation is equal to D, we want to print num1 divided by num2. Awesome. Great. So let's give this a whirl. Is everyone up to this point? Or does anybody have any questions up to this point? Let's give this a try. Number 1 is 1, number 2 is 2. And we get 12. Oh, that's right. Okay. It's because it expected we were taking in input, and we want it to be an int. So I can do this here, actually. So this is kind of funny. This I forgot. Val was taking in a string, right? But in reality, oops, sorry. In reality, we want it to be an int. So let's try again. Hopefully this works. Okay, whew. Great, we fixed it. So all I did was I told Python again. We told Python before, hey, this int, make it into a string, or this number, make it into a string. Well, here I told it, hey, that string, actually make it into an int. I don't want it to be a string. Because what happened was we tried adding them together, and they were both strings. And so you add 1 and 2, and you put them together, you get 12. So, all right, let's try some other. Let's make sure our other operations work. Let me get rid of this quotation mark because I was trying to illustrate escapes. Whoops. Here we go. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, and we want to do subtraction. So let's do 2 minus 1, and we get 1. Okay, great. Let's test out multiplication. So 2 times 2, and we get 4, as we expect. All right, let's try division. Just make sure. So 4, oops, sorry. So we're doing division, 4, and then second number is 2, and then we get 2, as we expect. And it's 2.0 because when we divide, we actually care about decimals, and so this is something that Python does to help us. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Cool. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? All right, cool, 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 cool. So then could you divide decimals? Absolutely. Here, let me show you. So 5.6. Oh, right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. Because we made it an int, no. So, I forgot. Is it possible to work with imaginary numbers? Yes, it is, but I'm not covering that. There are lots of libraries for math, by the way. So yeah, so you're right. Actually, we because we say here that it's we said here that it was an int. Yeah, when we divide them, when we try to use floating point numbers, that is a problem. You're right. So actually, we should not be using int. We should be using float. And so what this will do is, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, so let me try again. So 5.6 divided by 4, and then we got, okay, we're good. Yeah. Yep, Brandon, you're right. And NumPy covers that, you're right. Okay, great. So here we are. So yeah, right, we fixed it by changing this int to float. For some reason, when you're presenting in front of 50 people, you forget all the programming you know. Awesome. Great. So we have, and then we're going to make these. Ooh, it's elif. Yep. Sorry, in some languages it's not. Okay, great. So what I'm doing, yeah. All right, cool. So else if is actually elif. So what is else? I'm just saying if this condition isn't true, go to this condition. And this is really useful if we want to say like else, you know, if operation isn't any of those, then, you know, we can print, you know, I don't know what that is, you know, so, or let's be real programmers and say operation not recognized. So like, let's say, let's try this again. So we put in X, and then, okay, operation not recognized. It went to the end. So we started out this if, and then we went else if this, because X is not A, we said, okay, let's go to the next one, and let's go to the next one, let's go to the next one, let's go to the next one. Okay, great. It's almost midnight. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I will keep going, by the way. If people want to stay on and keep learning basic programming, I am happy to keep going. So why did you need to add plus string n in the input? The reason why is because when the first time we tried to, oh, we have the Hackathon Fundamentals Workshop at midnight. Yeah, so you can go to that too if you're new to hackathons. How do we make it so that the operation detection is not case sensitive? Good question. There's a function that you can use. We can do like to upper or something. I think it's called to upper in Python. Then it will, like, we can set our value that we take in, like in operation, we can do to upper, and then it will always be to A. Or we can do this. You can do this. This is one option. Not very good. Or you can do, I think, let me remember the function. Yep, upper. Sorry, it's upper. So we'll go to our operation, and then we'll say, so here we can do this. This is kind of cool. Upper. That, and oh, undefined named upper. What? Oh, that's a pandas function, that's why. Okay. There's a function to do that. Oh, of course. Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. So what we can do is so this is a function that works on the string. And so we're taking this string, we're saying make it to uppercase and return that to operation. Sorry about that. So let's do D, and then 4, 2, so that worked now. That worked. Yeah. Awesome. Sorry about that. Cool. So yeah, it is midnight. I do encourage people to go to the why was the string needed? Sorry, I started to answer your question. I started to answer another question. String was needed because if this we passed in as a number, we do prompt 1, and Python without string here, we get an error that we can only concatenate strings, not ints, to strings. So type error can only concatenate string, not int, to string. So that's why we add in string here, because it makes it so that this is treated as a string. Cool. So we did make a basic calculator application, and where we can run it and we can get into numbers, and then we can add them together. Hackathon Fundamentals Workshop is starting soon. It's also on the Hop-In. I really want to encourage people to go to the Hackathon, the Hackathon workshop, the Fundamentals Workshop. I do think it's really important, and Terrell is a really great presenter. I will maybe do a second one of these because there's a lot of people that have stayed through to the end. I'm sure that I can keep going and teach more Python, and I'm happy to do it. So check the schedule, and maybe I'll do like a 1 a.m. workshop. Yeah, thanks so much, Maximo. I really appreciate it. And would a second one of these be something that people are interested in? If you could let me know in the chat. Awesome, awesome. Okay, wow, lots of people. Part 2. Maybe not so late. Yeah, you're right. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I don't want to cut into Terrell's time. Thank you all so much for coming. It was really a pleasure to talk to you all, and work with you. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I hope that you learned a little bit more about programming. Maybe, if you've never programmed before, maybe you can make it like a project in the terminal like we did here. It was great to have you all. Thank you so much. All right, bye-bye.